Underneath the glitz and the glamour, Hollywood has always been about crushing the competition. A film cartel cornered the market, making independent films illegal, even sending mafia thugs to break up movie sets by force. So a rogue filmmaker fled across the country to escape their grasp, and created Hollywood in the process. The film industry began in New York, with Thomas Edison creating the world's first motion picture camera. He followed that up by producing the first projector to exhibit his films all throughout New York. These black and white silent pictures were an immediate hit, but he innovated further by pairing films with cylinder recordings of voices, eliminating the need for title cards to display dialogue. Edison was prolific, cranking out over 1,000 films in a short time. He was on top and the king of the budding new industry. But opportunistic theater owners began copying his prints and showing his films without permission, pulling profits away from Edison. Edison is rightly known as a genius inventor, but he was an even more brutal businessman. To combat the thefts, Edison sent his films to the US Copyright Office to try to cut down on illegal screenings. This didn't do much to stop his competitors from continuing to profit off his work. But Edison had a trump card. He owned a bulk of the major US patents on motion picture cameras, so he took the fight to the courtroom. He brought lawsuits against all the major filmmakers, decimating the burgeoning film industry. After all the dust had settled, just two major companies were left standing: Edison and Biograph. And Edison would have destroyed them as well, but Biograph used a different camera design, one Edison didn't own the patent to. Edison's next move was to notify all distributors and theater owners that they must use Edison machines and film, or they would be sued for infringing on his patents. Edison was merciless, and his competitors soon surrendered to his onslaught. The top film companies came to Edison with their tails between their legs. Edison saw this as an opportunity to corner the market. He and the companies would enter into a trust, where the other companies had to use his cameras exclusively. This new film trust consisted of all the major companies. The only notable name missing from the list was Biograph. Edison hoped this would do away with his top competitor, but here's the kill shot. No other applicant would be permitted to join, squeezing out everyone besides those select few, creating a film monopoly that Edison was now at the top of. Around this time, a young filmmaker, Thomas Harper Ince, was just getting his foot in the door. His father was a theater actor who moved the family to Manhattan when Thomas was young. Thomas then got involved in the family trade, originally as an actor, landing his first Broadway role at the age of 15. But Ince had bigger aspirations behind the camera. He ran into an old acting buddy that had left the stage for this new, less prestigious world of film acting. Ince decided to test out the new art form and landed his first role. He impressed the director with his abilities off camera, and he became a production coordinator for Edison's #1 enemy, Biograph. Ince then went off to work for a new company, where he finally got his big break. A director was unable to finish a film, and Ince persuaded the owner to let him fill in as the new director. Ince knocked it out of the park, and he was hired on full-time. Edison was still on the warpath. Independent motion pictures began filming outside of the US to avoid his attacks, so Ince headed to Cuba to shoot his next film. But Edison wasn't finished putting on the pressure. He succeeded in signing Eastman Kodak to the trust. Eastman Kodak owned the patent on film stock, so the only way to legally obtain film to shoot with was to be in this little club. They had patents on the raw film stock needed to film, motion picture cameras to capture with, and the projectors needed to screen the films. Edison has succeeded in creating a total monopoly on the film industry, and he ruled with an iron fist. The trust, going under the name Motion Picture Patents Company, used federal agents to enforce their patents, seizing equipment from those without a license. But it was not unheard of the Motion Picture Patents Company to hire mafia thugs to shut down illegal film sets. The constant threat of Edison and his agents throughout the New York area made filmmaking unbearable if you were not a member of the MPPC. Independent filmmakers still accounted for a quarter of film profits, and they had had enough of Edison's heavy-handed tactics. Not being able to stand up to the trust's might head-on, they began to flee to California. But why was California a good spot to escape Edison and his cronies? First, it was across the country from his hub in New York and New Jersey. Second, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals based in San Francisco rarely enforced patents. And third, if Edison was on the way, you and your film set could pack up and head to Mexico, where Edison had no power. So California became a hub for illegal filmmaking, with rogue directors now flocking there to outrun the MPPC. But they soon discovered there was another major advantage: geography. The weather is consistent and comfortable year-round, lacking snow and rain that could shut down filming for several days at a time. The area is geographically diverse, with desert sets, mountain ranges, ocean fronts, and cityscapes all within driving distance. Ince had gotten word of the exodus to California, and after returning from Cuba, he had a meeting with the co-owner of the New York Motion Picture Company, and he learned that they had recently opened a new West Coast branch. Ince was a huge fan of westerns, and those are the exact films he wanted to make. He convinced the co-owner to send him out to the new filmmaking frontier so he could direct their latest westerns. And Ince wasted no time moving across the country. Upon arrival, he was expecting to see sprawling movie sets and state-of-the-art facilities, but he was shocked to see the studio was just a tract of land graced by only a 4-room bungalow and a barn. This meager setup simply wasn't good enough for what he had in store. He needed more space with a range of different looks so he could shoot multiple films placed in various settings. Ince found that in a 460-acre ranch located in the Santa Monica Mountains. By 1912, Ince was able to earn the money, and he purchased Bison Ranch and even got the New York Motion Picture Company to lease an additional 18,000 acres in the Palisades Highlands, stretching over 7 miles between Santa Monica and Malibu. This is where Thomas Ince would build a magnificent film studio and revolutionize the entire filmmaking process. The giant ranch, now dubbed Inceville, was the first studio of its kind to have film sets, stages, production offices, dressing rooms, prop houses, and a massive cafeteria to feed hundreds of workers, all in a single place. He built mansions and ornate buildings styled after architecture from around the world. He leased a Wild West show out of Oklahoma, bringing in 300 cowboys, 600 livestock, and 200 members of the Sioux tribe to California to begin creating the massive-scale westerns. Ince streamlined the entire filmmaking process by creating a one-stop shop where you could script, film, edit, and print your films all in a single spot. Most importantly, he could efficiently pump out multiple movies at the same time. Prior to Ince, the director was king. He performed all the major creative roles we see today, like scripting, casting, and editing. Ince decided to separate each part of the director's jobs into distinct roles, while creating a position to shepherd the film from conception to exhibition. This new role of producer was now the ultimate authority responsible for the entirety of the motion picture. But a producer generally oversaw a single film. Ince needed a position at the studio that was able to oversee the entire operation and every single film being made. Ince became the first modern-day studio head, managing all the producers, directors, writers, editors, actors, and production staff. Ince then classified distinct phases of filmmaking so he could clearly know what stage each film was in at any given time. The filmmaking process goes as follows. Step 1. Development. Write an original film or secure the rights to source material. Hire the core creative team like writers, directors, and key stars. Step 2. Pre-production. Finalize the script and begin pre-visualization like storyboards and hire out the remainder of the staff. Step 3. Production. Shoot your film. Step 4. Post-production, where you piece together the film and editing, adding any music or effects. Step 5. Distribution. Send your film out to theaters and ramp up marketing efforts to increase public awareness. And finally, Step 6. Exhibition. Release your film to the masses and sit back and watch the profits roll in. With this new defined process, Ince was able to crank out 150 films in just a 5-year period, something that would have been impossible if he had to direct every film personally. This assembly line style of movie making is the model all major studios still use to this day. A film preservationalist marveled at Ince's newfound efficiency, stating, "He did everything. He was so proficient at every aspect of filmmaking that even films he didn't direct have that Ince print, because he exercised such tight control over his scripts and edited so mercilessly that he could delegate direction to others and still get what he wanted." Much of what Ince contributed to the American film took place off the screen. He established production conventions that persisted forebears, and though his career in films lasted only 14 years, his influence far outlived him. But as many good things go, Inceville would soon come to an end. In 1914, Ince and his partner at the New York Motion Picture Company had a falling out over money. Around this same time, the movie industry would begin to flourish as the United States brought Edison's film monopoly to court. In a strict verdict, the court rules that the Motion Picture Patents Company went far beyond what was necessary to protect the use of patents or the monopoly which went with them, deeming the monopoly an illegal restraint of trade under the Sherman Antitrust Act. Filmmakers were now free to create without the fear of litigation, and the industry opened up to far better ideas. Looking to free himself of his previous business arrangement with the New York Motion Picture Company, Ince would link up with real estate mogul Harry Culver. Culver convinced Ince to leave Inceville behind and relocate to build a new studio. Ince joined forces with two other power producers in D.W. Griffith and Max Sennett, and the three created the Triangle Motion Picture Company. Oddly enough, a fire broke out at Inceville just a few days later, destroying many of its buildings. Ince then sold his remaining share to his former business partner, and Ince was no longer in charge of the kingdom that he had built. The Triangle Motion Picture Company was another home run, further innovating on the concept of a full-service film studio. But Ince still wasn't satisfied. On July 19, 1918, Ince purchased a 14-acre property and officially launched Thomas H. Ince Studios. The studio had a magnificent replica of George Washington's home, with 40 exquisite offices surrounding the mansion. He built bungalows for movie stars, 2 stages, a hospital, and a fire department, along with a massive back lot in which to build outdoor sets. He hired 8 directors to crank out films as he oversaw the process every step of the way. But the beast of Ince's own design began to overtake him. Large companies had copied his studio model and began signing up top directing and acting talent to exclusive contracts spanning multiple years. And Hollywood as we know it today had finally been formed, and Ince, an independent filmmaker, was forced out of the world he helped create. And sadly, Ince wouldn't get more time to try to climb back to the top. The official story is that Ince was set to do a deal with media mogul William Randolph Hearst. Ince boarded his yacht for an evening of partying in honor of his birthday. The next day, Hearst and Ince would then hammer out the details of their latest venture, but that business meeting would never occur. That night, while celebrating aboard Hearst's yacht, Ince began to experience intense indigestion. A doctor took Ince to his home to receive medical treatment. Surrounded by his wife and eldest son, Ince died suddenly of heart failure at the young age of 44. And due to his young age and Hollywood's tabloids, rumors began to swirl that his official cause of death was a cover-up, that William Randolph Hearst or another partygoer killed the film mogul. But these have been proved to be sensationalized articles published by gossip rags we still see today throughout Hollywood. But Ince's legacy on the film industry is still alive today, from the process of filmmaking, to the roles in production, to the studio model. The film industry as we know it would not exist without the innovation of this criminal filmmaker that fled Edison and created Hollywood in the process. Thanks for watching.